We're now hearing more from another woman accusing Governor Andrew Cuomo of inappropriate behavior. Liss was a Cuomo policy and operations aide for 2 years and now works for Monroe County. She says she's, quote, not claiming sexual harassment per se, but says the toxic work environment was not a safe space for women. The 35-year-old sat down with CBS Rochester reporter Adam Chodak to share her experience.
In Albany at that time when you were there, why were you there?
I was selected to be an Empire State Fellow in the it was the second cohort. The governor had established a fellowship program modeled on the presidential management program that's in existence in DC to attract young talent. In my program, you had to have a handful of years of experience in the workforce and have a master's degree, write essays, do multiple rounds of interviews, get letters of recommendation. And my cohort was still a little over a dozen people, and we were all assigned to different departments and functional areas of state government, and I was placed in the governor's office to work on economic development programs.
How closely did you two interact?
We only interacted closely when he was in Albany because my office was adjacent to his office, and he would come through to talk to me and some other folks in my suite. But he never interacted with me in any meaningful way professionally.
What interactions stand out?
When he first came up to my desk, when I first was in his presence, and he shook my hand and asked me questions and was friendly towards me. And then also the picture of me and the governor that's right there, that was at the state budget reception in May 2014. We were celebrating 4 consecutive on-time budgets, and he approached me and hugged me, kissed me on the cheek, put his hand around my waist, and we took that picture together. And at the time I thought that was wonderful, and everybody was talking about it, and oh, the governor likes you, and he thinks you're cute. And years have passed, and I realize now that I wish that the environment were a little bit different for young women, young attractive women in Albany. Not that I'm saying that. I felt like a little bit objectified and not seen as a professional person.
Were there any other incidents in which there was some more personal interaction like that?
For me, there was one occasion that I was asked if I had a boyfriend by the governor, but in those interactions at the time I thought were harmless flirtations, and that's just how he is. And other women went along with it and reacted kindly and bashfully to that type of treatment. And what really did me in, I think, in state government, working for the governor's office, was just the broader workplace environment. It was toxic, retaliatory, hostile. There was screaming, there was name calling. There was a sense of fear in the air that you could do or say the wrong thing at any moment and lose your job. And I felt like I just couldn't survive in that environment anymore. And it triggered an emotional reaction and a mental health reaction for me. And my family was concerned about my health and well-being. I felt isolated, and I felt like a nobody. So I decided to share my story because it's a small piece of a much larger, more elaborate puzzle that I think New Yorkers should be aware of, because even though there are people out there saying that's just how he is, he's from a different generation, yeah, all that's true, but all of that happened to me before the Me Too movement, and it's still happening. And I don't think Albany or state government working in the executive chamber is a safe space for young women early in their careers.
I'd also read that at one point he kissed your hand. Was that when he had asked you if you had a boyfriend?
That was one of the multiple times that he approached me. I'd be sitting at my desk like this, and he would come through the door, and he would talk to one of the secretaries, and then he would come over to me and be like, "How are you doing today?" And, you know, we would have harmless banter. There were other women that were subject to much more explicit treatment than I was. My story is not identical to Charlotte's story or to Lindsay's story, but I think it supports the narrative that young women early in our careers were powerless in that environment to stick up for ourselves or our bodies.
Did his actions make you feel uncomfortable at the time?
His actions made me feel really nervous. Like, he sees me now. Now what? So you kind of just freeze. I had said to WNYC that I didn't want to appear as though I was opinionated or obstinate or make too much noise, because when you draw attention to yourself, it could go in one of two directions.
Why come out now as opposed to a couple of years? Because the Me Too movement did come out, and this might have fit under that hashtag, so to speak. Why come out now and talk about this?
When Lindsay Boylan first said something in December, I think she tweeted, I remember thinking, wow, that's dangerous. Good luck to you. I would never open my mouth. Like, they're going to crush you like a bug. 2 days after she posted the tweet, I was on my honeymoon, and I got a phone call from Rich Azzopardi, who is a senior advisor to the governor and his spokesperson. And he asked me, I thought at first that it was about work. Like, maybe it's about an economic development project that we're working on here. And he asked me instead, he said, you know, I have kind of an awkward question to ask you. Has Lindsay Boylan reached out to you? Have you spoken to her? And I said, no. And then when we hung up, I remember thinking, how many other people is he calling? Why is he calling us? And then I also felt a little low that that's the only reason why the governor's office might be calling me, because there were other things that we probably could have talked about. And then several weeks passed, and Lindsay wrote the Medium blog post. And this really started to blow up because she got into details and she showed the receipts. And simultaneously, the nursing home debacle was unfolding. And I thought, wow, what a crisis for the administration. And, you know, maybe it isn't as dangerous as I thought for Lindsay to speak out. And when I read her account, I thought, yeah, that is a really nefarious, it made me feel uncomfortable for her. She and I are the same age. And I could see the governor doing the same thing to me. And she called me a week ago on Monday. And she said that she was calling me because she knew, having observed me in the workplace on occasion, that I very likely could have had similar stories to share. And she wanted to encourage me and other women to share our stories anonymously if we wanted to. She was working with the New York Magazine on a longer form piece to explore the hostile workplace environment and the power dynamic there, the culture of fear. And so I talked to her, and that made me feel seen a little bit. I had an appointment with my therapist early last week, and I talked to her, and she helped me understand that my story was not, she helped me understand that what happened to me was not okay. And she helped me understand that a lot of the emotional damage that I experienced back then still lives with me today. Lindsay said in her blog post, or no, in her interview with Harper's Bazaar, something like, the damage didn't happen when you spoke out. The damage happened when the incident happened. And so I've been living with my story for so many years and glossing over it and hiding it and swallowing it down, pretending like everything was fine when it really wasn't. And then I went on background with New York Magazine and with WNYC, and talking about it, I realized was cathartic and made me realize that it was okay to talk. And of course, my boss is a politician, and when I spoke to him, I thought, oh, he's going to tell me, you know, no way, Anna, don't share your story or put your name on anything. But very much the opposite. He said that he has my back 100%, no matter what. And I felt safe, finally. Because I'm not coming out and saying that I was propositioned or that I was asked to play strip poker. I'm just saying that I was a young, vulnerable woman in what felt like a cesspit of toxicity. And I get that that's par for the course in political environments, but I don't think it should be par for the course.
And you say one of your goals in talking about this is to change the overall culture. What would you like to see specifically happen, or what would you like to see Governor Cuomo do with all of this out there?
I don't know that he can do anything. I appreciated that when he was asked about my narrative, he did not deny anything. And I also appreciate that he pointed out, rightly so, that mine is not a unique story. That was why I wanted to say something. I don't know that he can unwind the infrastructure that he built up in his administration, the power dynamics and the social dynamics, the intermingling of personal lives and professional lives. I don't know that he can change the culture overnight. I do believe that he has done a lot of good for upstate New York. I believe that he cultivated that power intentionally because he knows that's really the only way you can get things done in New York State, big things done. You have to grab the power and run with it. But with that comes megalomania. And when you feel powerful, you feel like you're unimpeachable. And I think it would be great to hear him talk much more directly, in depth, and less flippantly about how he sees himself as a governor and as a man, and how he views, you know, women in the workplace.
Do you think he should resign?
I've been asked that, and I don't know that I have an answer. If he resigns for anything, the nursing home situation has cost lives, and having worked there, I know how it works. You pretend like you're solving a problem, you make some inroads towards solving a problem, and then you distract the public with a narrative while all this broken stuff is happening behind the scenes. And I can only imagine how difficult that it was for them to handle that PR, the PR around the nursing home thing. But if he resigns for anything, it should be that. Because I'm not claiming sexual harassment per se. I'm just saying that it wasn't a safe space for young women to work, or women in general. there were women that didn't fit the archetype or the stereotype that were mocked and demoted. Like I said, it was a really retaliatory place to work. There was no HR. Like, I couldn't report to any, like, as a fellow, I technically worked for New York State Homes and Community Renewal, so they signed my paychecks. But I was assigned a mentor in the executive chamber who was my boss. But then I was sort of ripped out from under that person, and then I was existing in this gray area where I didn't have any recourse, I didn't have any friends. And in a typical workplace environment, you might, like, if something happened to me here, I would go to HR and I would file a complaint. Even if there was and they'll tell you that, oh, she could have gone to the governor's office of employee relations or whatever. But if I had done that, I would have gotten fired. That's what happened to Charlotte. She went to one of the governor's top aides. And that was more recently. When I was there, it was a lot different. There were people in my midst that later on went to prison. So it was just an even more vicious place to work.
And what's your response to those who are now saying this is all an orchestrated attack?
They're not reading the articles, they're not paying attention. And I mean, that's foolish. It's like QAnon. It's tantamount to QAnon, I think. Like, to think that I would be contacted by Donald Trump's people and be paid off, it's laughable, and that's a distraction.
What did you think of his apology?
Last week or over the weekend?
Last week. I mean, both, I guess, everything taken together.
Last week I thought was tone deaf and disrespectful. The press conference took place and he went on for over a half hour about COVID, and then the elephant in the room was Lindsay and Charlotte's allegations, and he I think reluctantly responded to those questions and characterized Lindsay's and Charlotte's experiences as they're just a couple of young, 20-somethings or 30-somethings who got a kiss on the cheek, and they're calling it sexual harassment. And that's just how I am. I'm the governor, and I'm photographed hugging people, kissing people all over the place. That's who I am. And I thought that was, he was trying to force the narrative into, oh, this is just about a couple of woke millennial women who are taking advantage of the Me Too movement to call out the governor for their own gain, which was not the case. And so I decided that I would come forward because I wanted to support their stories, and I wanted to make other women who experienced the same and similar things, empower them to feel like they can talk, that they're not going to be maligned in the public eye. Because the more of us that say, yes, that was the dynamic, yes, this is what it's like, the more real the story is. Like I said, my story is just one tiny pebble. He's been in politics his whole entire life. And, I wish that I didn't have to edit myself. I wish I didn't have to change who I am in the workplace to function there. You had to wear heels. You had to look good. Not that you work in the news business, you have to look polished, but the expectations for women were so much different than the expectations for men to work there and to be taken seriously and rewarded and elevated.
I'll just note at the end here, you do have a picture of Governor Cuomo up.
Yes.
Why is that? Is there some conflict going on in your estimation of him at this point?
So when I sat down with my interview with the Wall Street Journal, and I was talking about that picture and why I have it in my office, I started to cry because I have assigned it a great deal of value. It's a piece of evidence that I worked there and that he saw me and I was part of his team. But on the flip side, it's visible evidence, his hands on my waist. It's visible evidence of a moment in time where I remember him seeing me, coming up to me, approaching me, being somewhat flirtatious, and then other people around me being like, oh, Anna's getting the attention of the governor. Oh, he thinks Anna's cute. And recharacterizing it as something that I should put in my recycling bin is hard to think about. I think that he's a really great father. I've observed him with his daughters. He elevates women in his administration. Like Melissa DeRosa pointed out, there are a lot of strong women who occupy positions of power in state government because of him. But that doesn't excuse the patronizing behavior towards younger women who didn't have the same kinds of connections or the same sort of, I think to succeed as a young woman in Andrew's administration, you've got to be the kind of woman that cuts other women down.
What else would you like to add, Anna, that I might have missed?
I sought out, this is when I started seeking out mental health treatment. My family, loved ones observed that I was not doing so well. I left to go work for Cornell on my own accord. I applied for the job. I didn't seek out any help from the administration to help me secure a position somewhere else to escape. And at the time, I viewed it as a lateral move and that I had failed. I couldn't survive, and so I had to go kind of take a few steps back and then climb the ladder again. But what I learned several years later is that through my own capabilities and network and merit, I was able to get to where I am today. And I tell Adam all the time that this is my dream job. So my boss, Adam Bello.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, of course. I wish that, I had more anecdotes to share. I just want to be supportive of the countless other women that I think are going to come forward.
Do you think there's going to be more?